just looking at my mesh right now, and I'm going to insert an armature. So this puts in our first bone. When I display it in front, it helps it keep visible from all angles. Also change the display of the mesh to keep things from being too distracting. And in edit mode, I'm able to line up the bone with the mesh. This one is supposed to be the torso. Make sure everything is not moving on the x-axis at all to keep it symmetrical. Extrude that for the head. And I'm going to duplicate this bone, line it up for the abdomen. Just renaming all the bones here. I like to do that as I create the armature, so it's not a tedious process at the end. So I'm going to extrude that head bone, clear the parent, and duplicate it. No, hold on. I duplicate the head bone, deparent it, and reparent it. And now this one's for the antenna. I like to enable vertex snapping. This helps to keep the bone from going into all these wild directions and line it up exactly with the mesh how I think would best fit it. Extruding this bone, or realigning this bone. Again, this is why vertex snapping is helpful. Now I extrude this one for the middle section and the end section. The end is a little misaligned, so again, vertex snapping. Get it exactly where I want it to be. At this point, I realign everything on the global Z axis. And I will continuously do this as I create the armature, just to make sure everything is aligned. And everything is pointing in the direction it needs to point. This will be important later for stuff like inverse kinematics. So I'm going to duplicate that first antenna bone, set it up for the mouth. And align that one on the axis. Alright, from this point I'm pretty happy with the body and the face, and I'm going to move on to the legs. Starting to think through the how I want these bones to look. I'm realizing the first joint isn't going to quite make sense at the first knee, so I want to line it up with the shoulder instead. This will give me a little bit more control over how it bends and the initial rotation of the leg. Once I'm happy with the shoulder, I'm going to extrude that joint for the upper thigh. Now, it's okay that the bone doesn't necessarily line up exactly with the mesh, as long as the vertices are weighted how they need to be weighted to match the bone and the intended behavior. You'll see in the mesh I have some extra vertices around the joint where it's going to be bending, and I'll attempt to line up the bone joints with the mesh. That's just for better deformation. I'm treating these little end parts as a hand, essentially, or a finger, even. Again, lining things up with the extra vertices and extruding that all the way down to the end of the hand. So that first leg is looking pretty okay. I'm gonna rename all the bones again as I create the armature. Copy pasting helps a lot here. And that is the first leg done. All right, so now that I'm happy with the first leg, I'm just going to line it up for the second leg by duplicating it. It's not going to be exact. The front leg is a little bit bigger than the back leg, so some resizing is needed. Then at this point, just realign everything how it needs to be aligned. Again, making sure that everything is with the joints in the mesh, looking from all angles to make sure that everything looks how it needs to look, that it's properly nested inside of the mesh. Select everything that is wrong to save myself a little bit of time. And at that point, I'm pretty happy with this leg. So once again, just selected it with L, or well, first we have to rename everything. So this is the middle shoulder. And it's at this point that I'm realizing my naming scheme is a little scuffed. So I'm thinking of a better way to do that. So I want to make sure that the bone, the most relevant part is first. So we have a lower leg as the first part, and then which lower leg as the middle part. So in this case, it's the middle. So hand.middle.l. So we have the bone itself and then the location. It's mostly just helpful for myself, um, as I'm the one animating and rigging it. Organization is always good. The more organized you are, the easier it is to work for your future self to work with what you made. So I'm gonna have to rename all of the previous bones as well to match the scheme. And this is when I duplicate it. Again, just line up all of the joints. Make sure every angle matches how it needs to match. And it's looking pretty good. And of course, rename. So at this point, I'm pretty happy. The legs were definitely going to be the most tedious part of the rigging process. And at this point, I'm able to move on to the shell and the wings. Just looking all around first, real quick, just to make sure everything looks good before I move on. So for these wings, I have two blend shapes related to them, the folded and the basis. The basis is when they're unfolded, and folded is when they're shrunken down and folded. So removing that weighting to get their default pose, just so I can get a full look at how my beetle is going to look. At this point, I'm realizing that my legs aren't parented to the body. So just want to do that real quick. And then I go into pose mode just to make sure things are looking the way they need to look. Realized the abdomen wasn't parented either, so just went ahead and did that. So every body part moves along with the torso. That'll change in the future. I realized that later on. So I duplicate the abdomen bone and have it line up with the wing. Again, using vertex snapping to get things looking just right. So that's wing.l. Align everything on the global z axis. Right now, I'm just thinking what is the best way to set up the bone for the shell. So it's hard to see exactly where I want this joint to be. I just go ahead and hide all of the things that aren't really relevant right now. So I duplicate that wing bone, line it up somewhere that I think might work. I also have a reference to how beetles unfold their wings on another monitor, just to try and, stay grounded in reality. So one thing I always try to do, not in every case, but in as many cases as I can, um, I want the joints to be lined up exactly on the axis that they are placed on. So notice right now that this bone isn't quite straight. I want to straighten that bone out. So at this point, I am making a new bone. This is going to be the driver, the controller for the wing fold blend shape. What you'll notice in Blender, if you've ever tried, is that you can't animate bones and blend shapes at the same time. So what you need to do is you need to add a driver to your blend shape to a new bone. That way you can simply animate the bone and control the blend shapes that way. Okay, at this point I'm adding some transform constraints, some rotation constraints to the hand bones. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to allow me to control a single bone, which will influence the next bones in the chain. So, as you can see, I bend the top bone, the following bone bends with it. And if I repeat this process down the entire chain, then we're going to get some nice fluid motion. So you want to select your first bone, select the next bone in the chain, constrain those only to the X rotation. On the X axis, change the mix to add and the target and owner to local space. This is tedious to set up, but it is a huge time saver in the future when you're animating. You want to go back through and make sure you've hit every setting, because debugging that later is kind of a pain. All right, so that's a quick finger setup. And now at this point, I am considering how to set up my leg IK. I'm looking at this like it's an elbow, essentially, if you were looking at a human model. And generally, the process is taking the joint in edit mode, extruding it straight upwards. I have vertex snapping on, which I need to turn off here. So I extrude this straight upwards. Well, first, I hide everything that is in the way. Extrude it, deparent it, move it upwards. So this is what's called a pull target. This is where the elbow is going to aim towards while I manipulate the rest of the arm. Now I'm just thinking about which bone I want as the IK, the actual controller. I rename this. And I repeat the process for the next bones, the other legs. So now that I have my pull target set up, I'm looking at setting up the hand controller. At first, I parented the hand to the shoulder, which was an incorrect step, and I end up undoing this. So that's where I undid it. At this point, I'm looking at my first hand and I duplicate it and right click to reposition it exactly where it was, and I rename it. So then if I look in my armature hierarchy, I'm going to be looking for the IK and the pole that I just made. So here's the IK, the controller, essentially, and the pole. I want to parent the pole to the IK. That way, if I move the IK, the pole moves with it. Now I've tried to select the bone in pose mode, and you can see which bone is selected in the top left. Right now it's the ik.front.l. So I select my IK, and then I select the former bone in the chain, and I press Shift I. So that adds an IK to that bone. At this point, I set the bone chain to 2, which is the upper arm and the lower arm. And I set my pole target to the relevant bone, which in this case is pole.front.l. I need to change this angle. It's at this point that I'm realizing that something's wrong. Any small change is creating just a massive result. So I'm wondering what I'm missing here. Eventually, I'll realize that it's because I haven't deparented the IK from the lower arm. So here's where I clear the parent, reparent the pole, and everything is working as it should, mostly. So as you can see, I move the controller up and down, and the rest of the leg follows. I remove the rotation constraint from the following bone just so it didn't have that floppiness. I'm rotating everything, just kind of displacing the bone, make sure that it follows in a logical way. It'll look like it'll be easy to control when it comes to animation. I parented the IK to the shoulder bone, and that'll allow for a bit more control. If I rotate the shoulder, then the IK will follow. And I still won't have that jittery problem I was just having. So I make sure I have that IK selected, select the shoulder, Control P, make parent. And that's looking like it needs to look. Again, just testing out all the bones so that I know I can just repeat the process for the future. There's some misalignment from edit mode and pose mode, so I'm just gonna go ahead and fine tune that. This takes a little bit of fine tuning, but once you get it, you get it. So that's the front leg done. For the second leg, just repeat the process. Remove these rotation constraints as I know I'll have to do that. Go back into edit mode, duplicate the hand, rename the hand, control to ik.middle.l. It's also at this point that I'm realizing that all of these bones that are controllers need to be non-deform bones. So it's a pretty important box to check, especially when you're going to be skinning the model, applying weight paints. You don't want non-deformers deforming your mesh. So I set my IK and my pole target here. The pole target is hidden behind another bone, so I'm just gonna do it manually. Wondering what just went wrong, and I just haven't set the chain length. Right now it's chained all the way up to the torso where it shouldn't be, so I set the chain length to 2, and that corrects that issue. At this point, I just need to align it as I had done before, get it as close to perfect as I can, and it looked good enough. Again, just testing things out, parenting the IK to the shoulder, parenting the pole to the IK, and just playing around with it, make sure everything looks and behaves as expected. Oh yeah, I also like to copy rotation, so the hand um, copies the IK's rotation. So you select the IK and then you select the hand and you press Control Shift C and select copy rotation. That way if I rotate the IK, then the hand goes with it. All that's left is the back leg. Duplicate it, rename it, deparent it, parent the pole to the IK, parent the IK to the shoulder, go into pose mode, select the IK, select the previous leg in the chain, Shift I, and you'll get the inverse kinematic. Set your pole target, set your chain length, and realign it. So those are the leg controllers done. Actually, I failed to copy the rotation for the hand to the IK, so do that real quick. And now it's done. Checking the pole target, it's behaving how it should. At this point, I'm setting up some bone collections. But that'll be a step for later. I could have done that now, but it'll be a lot easier when I set up actual shapes and controllers for the bones. So this video, I'll be covering setting up our bone shapes. So I start by creating a new mesh, a new cube, a new circle, and a new sphere. So these won't have anything to do with the model itself. These will just be used to set up bone controllers, and those will ultimately make it way easier for me to animate. Add these to a new collection called shapes. I can just disable the collection from here and never think about it again. So we go into pose mode, which is where we need to be. Oh, actually, first we're going to add a root bone. So this is a bone that the torso will be parented to. That way I can move the root, and thus everything will follow with it. Okay, so here in pose mode, we're going to select the IK front and find the cube mesh that we made. If we enable wireframe, we're going to just be able to see through it. Scale it to match the hand. Make it more of a rectangular prism. So when we're animating it, we can just click the IK, the cube, and that will be way simpler than trying to get that little bone mesh instead. Repeat the process down the line. I'm just going to go ahead and copy the settings. It doesn't need to be exactly perfect. These have no, control over the armature itself, this is purely for you or the animator and making their lives easier. So these finger joints, I'm gonna turn into circles, and then I'm going to line up that first one, rotate it 90 degrees, um, copy that 90, and then paste it for all of the other circles. This process is absolutely a tedious one, and there's possibly a better way to do it that I don't know about. But again, a lot of your early setup will make your future self a lot happier. Fighting over the bones and clicking on what you need to click on is just a painful process without doing something like this. I want to shrink that last one down so it wraps nicely around the hand. You'll see that I'm clicking and dragging my mouse down from the scale X down to the scale Y, and that allows me to change all three settings at the same time. Now for the shoulder bone, it's a bit hard to see with everything else behind it. I should really uncheck the in front setting in the viewport display, but we're just going to deal with it. So what I do instead is just replace these obstructive bones with the shapes that I'm going to ultimately use. Trying to decide what shape I want to do for the wing, and I'm just deciding on the cube. And I'm going to place it at the very end of its at the end joint, essentially. Just make it nice and small. And translate it far enough away that it makes sense. Put it right at the end. So I'm checking how it looks if I rotate this bone, and yeah, I can just select it and rotate it, and it'll move how I'd like it to move. So do the same for the shell bone. And for the root bone, I always use a plane, rotate it 90, make it nice and big. Here's the abdomen. I'm going to make that a circle and have it encompass the body. Translate it downwards a little bit. And then I want to make it big enough. No, we'll do that later. So here's the torso. I'm going to make that a plane as it's the center of the body, essentially. And here's the head. Make that one a circle. Have it wrap around the head nicely. It's pretty much already where it needs to be. I might change it up a little bit, make it flat. So here are the IK bones. I always like to have these as circles, or spheres, I'm sorry. They don't need any rotation or translation, just scale them downwards. I think it's at this point that I realize that the spherical IK or pole targets conflict with the sphere that I made for the wings. So I changed these to cubes instead. It makes a lot more sense with the hand controllers being cubes as well. So those extruded limbs essentially will be cubes, whereas the controllers and pull targets, for example, will be spheres. Thinking about what shape I'd want to use for the wing fold driver, and I just decide on no shape is necessary. And it's at this point that I can now set up the bone collections. So I go through all of these controller bones and remove them from the deform group that I created. And what this is going to do, it's going to allow me to hide them or hide the bones that will not be necessary for animation. So just do one quick little pass over. Select all of the control bones now, which are the bones that I'm going to be using to animate. I'm realizing I missed the shapes for the mouth parts. But yeah, as you can see, when I uncheck that eyeball, um, I can remove the bones that won't be relevant for animation. In this case, it's pretty much just those leg bones, which if I don't need to see them, then I don't want them there. Those leg bones are controlled through the IK that we set up previously. So now that everything is out of the way, I can actually go and move on to the shoulders that I had started before. They're a little bit finicky, but I get them set up over some time. Just going back through to to add shapes to these final controllers. I'm going to use a cube to kind of follow the same principle as I had for the wings. Try to make it line up, but it's not that important. Kind of realizing that the position on the joint is probably not where I want it to be. Go into edit mode, line it up in a more logical fashion. And that's good enough for me. Yeah, I was just trying to mess around to see what axis I wanted to rotate that on, and that's the local Z axis in this case. So I kept moving it around. Now for these antennae, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the hands, fingers. Turn those to circles, rotate, translate, resize. I realign that one just a little bit. Now with in front unchecked, I can kind of look over how everything is going to look in the animation phase. It's relatively clean. When you have so many controllers, it's going to look a little messy. I moved that unfold controller back. That felt a lot more logical. I'm going to go back through and recolor these bones now. So the central bones, such as the abdomen, waist, head, and root bone, those are going to be yellow. Anything on the left side is now going to be blue. So you select all those bones, you check the color, and then you click that little button there, and it sets all of the selected bones to that color. I'm noticing that pull target is inside the shell. I could probably translate it outwards, but for the sake of accuracy, I'm going to keep it exactly where it's at, and I'm just going to make a mental note that the IK is inside the shell. I made these wing bones a slight off blue, just to kind of signify that they're different. They're related to the wing rather than the full body. And it's at this point I'm pretty happy with it. Um, if I symmetrize this, anything with the .l on the end of its name will be duplicated on the other side. And just double checking that everything has that. So I go ahead and symmetrize it. That's why I did so much work previously, so that when I do symmetrize it, then everything gets duplicated, save myself some time. You want to make sure you have everything selected though, and all of your ducks are in a line, such as the bone collections. Um, I added a new collection called Mech or Mechanical. That's for certain things that aren't really a controller, they aren't really a deformer. They're more to help facilitate certain behaviors in your mesh. You could make the argument that the wing unfolder is a control bone, but I put it in mechanical just to make it a little bit different, just to separate it. Um, so now I have my symmetrized set of bones on the right. Um, I'm going to change their color to red. That way, at a single glance, I can tell what bone I'm looking at, or what side the bone is related to. So that includes all the shoulders, the pull targets, and the mouth bits. Set those to red, push that button, and we have ourselves a rigged and controllered model. All right, now that I have my shapes done, I went over and I checked my armature. I thought about ways to improve it, and I started with the antenna. I thought it would be a little annoying to control each individual antenna bone, so I'm gonna add an IK to it, just like I did the legs. This one will be a little bit different though. The IK will be extruded from the final bone, and it'll serve as the primary controller. So its chain length is 3 in this case, and I'm trying to figure out why it's not behaving the way I want it to. I'm messing around with like the pull target, which obviously isn't the issue. Um, I wasn't planning on having a pull target for this particular IK. The issue is ultimately just because I haven't unparented it. It's still connected to the previous bone in the sequence. So here I clear the parent, and that allows it free movement. And you'll see that the bones behind it are now following the IK. I've already symmetrized my bones, so I'm going to have to duplicate this step. And now I'm removing the custom controllers because I'm no longer going to be needing them. I'm removing the colors. It's probably unnecessary, really, to do that, but I just did it for the sake of completion. I remove them from the control group, and that just keeps things a lot cleaner on the side animation side. I don't have all those rings, those extra things just getting in the way. Just have a single controller. Just another pass over, make sure things are behaving how I'd like them to. And at this point, I am moving on to weight painting and skinning. So what I did here was I added the body, or I parented the body to the mesh. I'm sorry, I parented the body to the armature with empty groups, and I'm parenting the legs to the armature with automatic weights. And that actually ended up looking a lot better than I thought it would. I pretty much didn't have to do anything. I actually didn't do anything extra to the legs. The automatic grouping was perfect. Um, and that comes down to good positioning on the joints and um, adding those extra vertices that I had shown previously. So now I'm taking the shell parts, like the head part, and I'm parenting them to the armature with empty groups because I want to manually affect these vertices. I don't want the automatic weighting. The reason being, the shell is a hard surface. Essentially, it's not supposed to bend. So I'm going to weight them to a particular joint so that it bends as a single body. But before that, I'm gonna just start with the actual body, the base mesh, if you will, and I'm going to make sure I have my brush looking or my brush behaving how it should. I want to symmetrize it, so if I do an action on one side, it repeats it on the other side. Now, what this is doing is it's essentially a heat map for how much influence a particular bone has over the mesh. So in this case, I have the head bone selected, that ring, and I am telling that bone that it's going to have strong influence over um, those vertices. So when I rotate it, that's why you see that rotation of the model. It looks a little wrong now, but that's because we have no weighting on the bones behind it. As we smoothen things out, it will start looking and deforming as expected. So here we have the waist or the torso. So we're going to start painting in the torso vertices. I press Shift Z to give myself a view of the mesh, the outline, so that gives me a lot more accuracy and control over what vertices I'm painting on. So I swap to the blending brush. That way, when I bend this model, um, the the bone behind it kind of has a predictable and not such a hard um, deformation at that seam. I'm just doing a quick little pass over now. I saw some issues that I wanted to fix, but I kind of just want to get the full body done before I go and fine tune it. The whole abdomen is just going to be attached to the one single bone. I don't need so much deformation in this, especially because of that shell. The shell is, keeping things pretty much a single body part. So what I noticed here and what I want to try and fix is there's just like a hard break between the head and the body, and so I blend things out again. It's that single vertex in the corner there. Essentially, it comes down to a lack of geometry. Um, with more geometry, it'll give you a better deformation. I'll come back to that later. I just want to get the antenna done now. I'm realizing that painting the left one and the right one, or painting the right antenna is affecting the left antenna as well, which is not going to work out for me when I test it out, but I'll go back and manually fix that later. There's definitely a more efficient way to have handled this, but I couldn't think of it at the time. So this is where I realized the issue, and I just removed the weighting from the right antenna to the left antenna. So a faster way to do this rather than manually painting is selecting all of the relevant vertices and then going into the vertex groups and removing the weighting from each vertex group. So that way I go back into weight paint mode, try to deform the right antenna, and I see that there's no effect on the left antenna, which is what I wanted. I'm just kind of inspecting the deformation and seeing if it's acceptable, and it's really not to me at least. And just trying to control the bone in such a way that I would be happy with it. Um, I'm noticing the antenna is just not really bending how I'd like it to, and that's an issue with the IK and the just the bone system behind it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of debug that, see if it looks better with a chain length of 2 instead, and that gives me even less control. So it's not what I want. And I'm starting at this point to think that I actually need another bone. So I'll go ahead and move that one inwards some more. Make sure my actions are duplicated on the other side so I don't have to double my work. So I go into edit mode here, and I think maybe I do need a pull target. Ultimately, I this is where I subdivide that bone into 2 bones, and now it's going to need some new weighting and an increase to the chain length. See, that's kind of what I wanted to be able to do. It's just not really going the way I wanted it to. This was more of a perfectionism type of issue than an actual issue. I could have easily just moved on from this and said whatever, but I didn't want to do that. I think at this point I'm realizing that the pull target is just not helpful at all, and it just makes things harder. So that ended up giving me the movement that I wanted. Just some realignment of the bones and some an extra bone. Just took a lot of troubleshooting, but I had actually ended up getting somewhere that I wanted to be. All I had to do at this point was weight paint again for these antennas. It's a lot more finicky than I expected it to be. but I'm pretty happy with the result. I added in a little bit more geometry just to give myself some more control. Try to smooth that out with the smudge tool or whatever it's called. And that's looking pretty good. It actually ended up having a really nice result. Just had to duplicate whatever I had done on that side onto the left antenna instead. For some reason, my brain wasn't really working in this moment. I'm trying to think of a more efficient way rather than manually painting the other side. And I just decided, whatever, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it manually. It's ultimately not that much. It's a little annoying, but it's okay. All right, so at this point, I go ahead and select the other joints, the other bones, try to replicate exactly what I had on the right side onto the left side. So that's looking just about right. Checking the next bone in the line. And we're on the last bone in the chain. Try to get through this nice and quickly. Realizing I need the IK parented to the head bone. That way, when I rotate the head, the IK comes with it. Again, I'm looking at that hard joint there, that hard corner. It's really messing with the silhouette as it rotates. So go back into weight paint mode, see what I can do about that. And I'm just thinking there's just not enough geometry here. Even with a lot of smoothing out, it's just not really hitting where I want it to. So I go into edit mode, move things in a little bit. Still not quite there. So I add this loop cut right here. Move these lines in, smoothing things out just a bit. And I'm thinking that's going to look a lot better. So back into weight paint. And it already looks way better. It's exactly what I was looking for. So now I want to get the shell parts assigned. Since they were with an empty group, I can just go into the vertex groups panel and assign them to the relevant joint. So for the headpiece, assign it to the head. These wing parts, I wanted to assign the left wing to the left uh, bone and the right one to the right bone, but something was wrong with my mesh. It was all being selected as a single mesh, so I needed to go through and debug that. Um, this took me a minute to figure out. You'll see me doing some troubleshooting here. So I hit everything just so I can look at exactly what I'm looking at. I think it's this line here. Yep. Both sides are sharing this line, which was not intended. And I'm just going to pause the video now and move on to the next one where I figured out the issue. So that's the end of video 4. Select those vertices and go and assign them to the left elytron group. And then the right one to the right elytron group. Now I'll take the right wing and the left wing. I'm realizing now that when I'm in edit mode, they're fully retracted, so I can't quite see them. So I hide the shell, go for the left wing, or the right wing, assign it to the right wing. Take the left wing and assign it to the left wing. Testing out the rotation, and it's actually looking quite good. Testing out the rotation of the shell, and that's looking pretty good too. The joint is pretty much where I want it to be. So I'm testing out the rotations and deformations with the armor now as a part of it. And it's at this point that I'm realizing my current body setup isn't quite adequate. See, if I rotate the waist, I just wanted the front side to rotate, but because the abdomen is parented to the torso right now, the abdomen rotates as well. Also, when I rotate the abdomen, the shell doesn't go with it, so I need to parent the shell to the abdomen. That fixes that issue. The wings also need to be parented. Now I'm also noticing the legs are not moving with the abdomen. because the legs are all attached to the torso. So I take these back shoulders and parent them to the clear their current parent and then parent them to the abdomen instead. So as I rotate the abdomen, the legs come with it. Still wondering what I need to do about the torso. So I set aside the torso issue for now and moved on to the wing driver. So I look for the shape key, the folded shape key, and I add a driver to it. Now I want to control this driver with a bone. So I select my armature as the object and the bone, I set it to a wing fold bone. Now I affect it using the Z location of that bone. I also realized that with these as a single object, I won't have individual control over the wings. So what I need to do is I separate them into two objects. Call this one wing.r and this one wing.l. Make sure the right wing is affected by the correct bone. So I add a driver to it, select my armature, and I set the bone to wingfold.r. So now that those are set, I can alter the Z position of these bones and control the driver. Now it's not exactly going the way I want it to. I want it to open if I move the bone upwards. So I edit the equation. Right now it's +1, I make it -1. So if I go into pose mode, that's still not what I wanted, but you know what? I decided to live with it. So now I go back to the torso issue here, and I'm thinking that I probably just need another bone. So I take my torso and I subdivide it. So this new larger bone here is going to act as the new torso, whereas the smaller one in the back is now going to be my waist or the hips. It really doesn't change much on the weight painting side other than the body is now going to be weighted to the to the torso, the new torso, and the hips are going to be there simply as a connection point for everything else. That way I can control the torso without affecting the abdomen. Lining up the new bone shape here. Go ahead and hide everything else so that I can see exactly what I'm doing with the body. So now I repeat what I had done previously for the new torso bone. So I'm wondering what's going on here. The torso should not be affecting the abdomen. Um, and I realize it's because the abdomen is still parented to the new torso. It needs to be parented to the hips now. And with that, my troubles should be gone. And just like that, that's what I wanted. I can now control the front body and the back body separately, while the hips still remain kind of a master control. Let's go through, blur things out a little bit. Unhide everything. And that is my completed rig. Thank you for watching if you stuck it all the way through. Hope you learned something, and have a great day.